All right. So I'd like to welcome everyone to the first ever topic debate that we're going to be doing here at MHS. It's a series I want to go ahead and start and just kind of get a general opinion of what people are thinking on our school campus, like how the community outlook is really facing. And right now the biggest issue we're facing is the presidential race. So here with me today I have Andrew Greenberg and Xavier C with me, who are, Xavier is more of the nonpartisan kind of guy, and Greenberg is more of the Trump man over here. Here I have Tyler, who is going to be supporting Clinton, and Mr. McCoy, who will also be supporting Clinton. And let's go ahead and get underway. So I want to aim this more at the Clinton camp real quick. You'll get the first question. In light of much of the controversy swirling around both candidates, how do you justify your support for your candidate? So like, yeah, you guys, go ahead.
Are you going to go for?
So how do you like wake up in the morning? Like, what do you tell people whenever you say, "I'm going to vote for Hillary"? I am a Hillary supporter. Like, what claims do you think most attribute your candidate to being the most valid for the presidency?
Well, she has real political experience. In 2001, she was voted into the Senate, and in 2009, she was 67th head of the Senate.
The State Department, right.
Yeah.
She is by far the most qualified person to ever run for the office of President of the United States.
Okay, so the Trump camp, how you guys feeling?
About their responses, or?
Or you guys can rebuttal, you can just like make your justification, however you want to go about it.
Well, I would first say it's hard to deny experience based on the title that somebody holds, but I think if you look at the issues that have been going on in the country, I would say of all of that wealth of experience, what do we really have to show for it that Hillary can put her name on? And the answer to that is nothing, except failed policies.
Well, if you want to spin it that way. Hillary actually had a long track record as a senator. She did a lot after 9/11 for the victims of 9/11, specifically the first responders, pushing through a bill in Congress to help pay their medical bills, and got an investigation opened into the air quality at Ground Zero.
Well,
While Trump, on the other side, took money from the 9/11 Commission and put it into his building.
Well, I think you have to look at a couple of things there. One, are we saying that it is Hillary Clinton who was solely responsible for making sure that the 9/11 victims are taken care of? And that's preposterous to say. We were in a country where everybody was rallying behind that. So to say that that's somehow some experience that's unique to her is just not genuine. It's not a genuine argument to make. And secondly, even Hillary Clinton herself had trouble answering when asked during the primary debates with Bernie Sanders what were her biggest accomplishments at the State Department. She couldn't even answer, and it was deflect. Let's deflect. Bernie Sanders even called her out on those questions a few times. So I think it's very important that you have to look, if you are running for President of the United States, at the very least, I would hope that you would prepare a statement ahead of time so that when somebody asks you what is your biggest accomplishment, you have an answer for them.
And at the very least, you follow precedents of 40 years of releasing your tax returns. We know nothing about.
Okay, but hold on. Let's stay on her and
Okay,
as Secretary
okay.
of State, because we can bounce around all day long. You can avoid the questions all
Mr.
day.
Greenberg, I did not interrupt you while you were going on your diatribe.
Well, just answer the question then.
The question being, she was the senator from New York on 9/11, and so yes, she is responsible for a lot of what happened after 9/11 in putting that city back together. Donald Trump was a citizen of the city of New York and did nothing to help the people of New York putting that city back together. Hillary was there.
My final comment on that would just be so we're asked, we have a woman who was the First Lady. She served a term as a United States Senator, and then she was Secretary of
She's
State.
elected twice.
Okay, served. So I meant to say that was the political office she held, and then she served 4 years as Secretary of State. And the only, or rather the most important thing to you is she made sure the bills of the 9/11 families got paid, those medical bills. Is that important? Absolutely. Do I think it's a great thing? Of course. but he mentions nothing of the economy. He mentions nothing of keeping Americans safe. He mentions nothing of the border security, which both Republicans and Democrats claim are problems. So of all this wealth of experience, we have to go all the way back to 2001 to see what was going on with Hillary Clinton.
And she brokered a peace deal between the Palestinians and Israel while she was Secretary of State. She was the most traveled Secretary of State in history, traveling, logging many, many thousands of air miles, visiting other countries. She spoke out women's rights or human rights. She has gone all over the world trying to make people see democracy. Now, she did do the Russian restart, and although some people think that that was a bad idea, at least she tried to do something with Russia.
All right, so I want to point this next
She's
question.
done many things is what I'm getting at. She's an experienced politician. She's an experienced world leader.
All right, so going off of that, I want to ask the students this question more than anything because it's more of a philosophy question. So I know Donald Trump has said a lot of things about, oh, Hillary has bad experience, and Hillary, on the opposite end, has said that Trump has made a lot of outrageous comments that means he won't be in the right mind to really be the president. So I want to ask you guys, do you think that a bad experience is more important, or do you think that bad experience could be more detrimental to the country, or could a man who is so fiery, passionate, and so prone to saying ridiculous things, do you think which one of those do you believe is more detrimental to the country as a whole?
You have to take it into the view of context. When you're talking about bad experience, well, you have to look at what this person has learned from that bad experience. And personally, has Hillary learned from most of her bad experience? No, I don't think she has. She keeps continually making mistakes, and over her terms, no matter where she serves, these mistakes are going to keep happening, especially if she's put into the office of president. Any mistake she makes at this point, she's not going to have really enough time to learn from them. And as we've seen, she hasn't learned from them. While Trump, on the other hand, he's a very passionate man. I will give him that. And while he does make mistakes, I think at the same time, due to his party and who he is aligned with, he understands and is kept accountable for his mistakes. So he has more of a checklist than Hillary does behind him.
I feel Trump, though, he hasn't remarked his mistakes. He said many racist comments and still continues to do this today. He hasn't.
Well, when we talk about racial comments, you remember what Hillary called Obama in the first election? No one remembers that at all? Well, if I remember correctly, it was somewhere along the lines of the N-word, in which almost completely threw her out of the presidential race, which is why Hillary pretty much dropped out of that race at that time. So you want to talk about racial comments, even though saying sorry or something, people tend to forget these events that happen, but at the same time, it's more along the facts that people do make mistakes, so which party is going to hold it more accountable? They let Hillary run again, and as we've seen, it's not going to be the best effect for the Democratic Party.
You could have at least gone with actual fact. She, at one point in the 90s, said something about African Americans and gangs being super predators, which she did apologize for. But the N-word, I'd like to see your fact on that.
Okay, so I know that both candidates have had a lot of controversies swirled around them recently. Hillary Clinton with her emails, and then Donald Trump with his sexist remarks and people who were coming out in droves talking about his sexual allegations against them at the moment. So, and Hillary has also said things. She's made a comment where a president should have private ideas and then public ideas. So, ideas that they hold with maybe close ones, relatives, whatever, and then opinions they hold publicly for the betterment of the country. So, do you believe that, especially for Donald J. Trump, do you believe that he should be held accountable for the things he said back in 2006, I believe, on the bus? Yeah.
Well, I'll start with an answer to that one. You bring up the public opinion and the private opinion. And it was interesting to see that both sides, voters from both sides of the aisle, thought that that was wrong. They didn't like that response, that you would say one thing to a group of people and another thing to another group, or behind closed doors, how you really feel. So if you truly believe that, then you can't really get mad at Donald Trump for saying some things, in your words, Moderator, were fiery, passionate. I would want a president of the United States who was fiery, passionate about making sure lives are better for every American, rather than somebody who doesn't drum up much support. But you can't get mad at him then for speaking his mind and having no filter, and he says some things that might hurt our feelings, and then get mad and say, well, actually, I think he should say all those things behind closed doors, and he should be perfectly polished whenever he speaks to an audience. It doesn't make sense. You either have to dislike him because you don't like what he says, but when Hillary makes sure that everything she says in public is perfect before it comes out of her mouth, you have to then look at that and say that is a problem. So yes, he might say some things that aren't necessarily the most savvy or the most politically correct way of saying them, but let's just focus for a second on what the issues are in the campaign. Do we want to make sure that we are beating to death the word choice a guy uses before the election, or do we care more about the policies he'd want to implement? Is he perfect in his communication? Heavens no. But I would hope that we're looking at what is behind those words and what's backing those words up more than just the individual word itself. We can all correct somebody's words for them and say, well, it would have been better if you said this, but it's the ideas behind those words that matter.
What is his specific policy for making life better for Hispanics?
The immigration issue is a big one. Many legal immigrants dislike the idea that the amount of time, the amount of money, the amount of headache that was spent becoming a legal citizen, now we're just going to grant amnesty, or this road to amnesty that Hillary wants to do. It's ridiculous. And many are look at the Cuban Americans in Florida right now. They're voting overwhelmingly Trump. Now, if we group them in with the rest of Hispanics, that's when you can get a poll that says Hillary Clinton dominates among Hispanics right now. But if we break it down and look at different groups, we can see that some Hispanics really do like Trump. If they do, we have two choices. We can either say, well, there's something wrong with them, and then we can analyze who the real racist is, or we can say, what is it about his policies that will actually help the Hispanic community?
I said, and that's exactly what I asked, what policy has he put forth to help the Hispanic population in this country?
The immigration, curbing illegal immigration, ensuring that this open border policy doesn't continue where people are just coming in and there's no way to track it.
Okay, the 14 to 20 million illegal people in this country, what is his plan to help those people? Hillary has said right up front that there will be no deportation for people who have children in this country who are legal citizens of the United States. Donald Trump has said there will be a deportation force to round up anybody who's illegal and send them out of this country, leaving their children who are citizens here either as orphans or sticking them somewhere, I guess, in a camp, because there's no real plan there. So how are we going to deal with his immigration other than build this massive wall and throw people out?
Round up those illegals who are here that have committed crimes and that aren't willing to make it right by the American people.
That was his first position. That was the position he took after he found out that he couldn't round people up and send them out. But that's what he wants to do. That's what he has said. That is where his support comes from. Throw out the illegals. What is Trump's policy for people, helping the people who are in this country, legally or illegally, that are Hispanic?
Well,
One policy.
Make the immigration system more streamlined. He has said that at many of the debates he's been at. It's on his website. You can look it up. To make it a simpler process, but before you can make something simple for the American people and then the immigrants that are going to come here legally, before you can make that process really work smoothly, you've got to get some barriers out of the way. So it sounds like what the problem is the people who support Hillary Clinton like the idea of, oh, there are no problems, let's just make everybody legal because that's the only way we can show people that we care. Well, that's not true. If there's a problem, you have to fix that problem before you then start changing the actual immigration policy. That's why the Republican platform consistently says, let's start adhering to our immigration law and then we can focus on solutions to fix it. Are you going to try to rebuild the house while it's still on fire? No.
Well, the Republicans have been in control of both houses of Congress for quite some time now.
You want to see how many immigration bills we've sent Obama that he's not signed? Let's have that conversation. I'd love to. But this is about Hillary. I know you don't want to talk about her, but let's stay on her right now.
Let's let the Hillary camp super quick.
Okay, well then, let's move on away from Hispanics into Muslims. What is his particular policy for Muslim Americans who are living in this country?
Okay, when you
How's he gonna help them?
when you are able to vet the Muslims with radical ties, and the American people no longer have to fear that the droves of militant age Muslim refugees coming in from different Middle Eastern countries, when they're coming in and scaring everybody about the Muslim population on the rise, when we can pinpoint and we can bring in only those who are going to be good for our country, then the American people won't fear the Muslims that are here anymore. When nobody's fearing those Muslims, then Islamophobia goes down and everybody can start getting along.
So then the actual answer to your question is, there's going to be a religious test, which flies completely against the Constitution of the United States.
Okay, it doesn't fly against the Constitution of the United States. The Constitution is here to protect the American people, not to make sure that we don't hurt the feelings of foreigners trying to come over here, many of whom would like to do us harm. I mean, that's preposterous to say that it should protect those people. They're not even citizens yet.
Well, I think that when you look at the city of St. Cloud, Minnesota, and the struggles that they're having there right now, a lot of that has to do with Somalian refugees that also happen to be Muslim. The problems that they're seeing in that community are all created by this fear of somebody who's different than them. And I think that Donald Trump just adds to that fear of somebody who's different.
Well,
there hasn't been, and it takes 2.5 years to come into this country because of the vetting process we already have in place. So what is wrong with the vetting process we have on immigration that Mr. Trump is somehow going to wave his magic wand and fix?
Jay Johnson, our current Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, has been on many shows where he has said, we don't have a handle on who's coming in. We cannot properly vet who's coming in, and we don't know the extent to which people might have terror ties. To me, and it kind of goes back to the original statement, why don't we take a break? What is so bad about his policy of taking a break? Let's get a handle on it, and then we'll reopen it again. How is that racist, or how is that unconstitutional to say, hey, if there's a problem, let's just slow down for a minute, let's solve that problem, and then we can resume. This time we'll actually know what's going on. I can't see how that's racism.
Because last December, he said Donald J. Trump is calling for a complete and total shutdown on all Muslims entering the United States.
And he has since retracted that statement.
Well, you don't let Clinton retract anything, so...
Sure I do. Sure I do. But when you say I have a public issue and a private issue now, or a policy on those kinds of things, you never really know which one she's going with. You don't know which one is the truth. I mean, that's of her doing.
And you know this how?
What I'm saying is we can't know. So you're right. Thank you for proving that point. We can't know. Isn't that sad that we can't know what one of the presidential candidates is standing for?
Yes, and if he would release his taxes, we would find...
Oh, yes, because those mighty taxes, let me tell you why that is a big deal. Because Hillary Clinton wants to demonize wealth in the pursuit of doing great things, the American dream, where if you work hard, you can do it. She wants to demonize that. And so as soon as Trump releases his tax returns and it says he's making a boatload of money, which we all know he would, we're going to say, how could he possibly relate to you? He's too rich to know what's going on. He's part of that 1%ers group. Then we're going to talk about the wage gap that's occurring, and we're going to talk about all these things. We're going to demonize him and his success, and we're going to try and distract from Hillary's problems.
I can give you that. I think that the problem is, though, that when you take $1 billion loss in 1 year and then carry that forward for, 16, 18 years, and you don't pay a single dime in federal income tax, then the people sitting in this school suffer.
Absolutely. So let's change that system. And in the years that the secretary was a senator, she did nothing to address that concern.
Well, there are 100 senators, right?
Yes, thank you. But she still, did she do anything with it? No. So we can't sit there and say, oh, she has all this experience with the problems that we currently are mad at Trump for dealing with, and she wasn't part of the process to try and solve that issue.
Yeah, so she paid millions in federal income tax.
Yeah, well, and if you think millions, her millions are what saved this country from total economic collapse, that's absurd.
No, that was President Obama.
So going off of that right there, do we believe that the extension of Obamacare will be beneficial for the country, or do we believe that the ending of it will be more beneficial? I'll give it to the Clinton camp real quick.
I think it's going to be more beneficial for us because, as we see, it's helped millions of people gaining affordable insurance now, so we can actually, and it, not just that, with, say someone makes $15,000 a year, when tax return comes, they can get up to $8,000 back. Why should they get this much money back when they're only making, that's over half what they're making? Now, the Obamacare, what it's doing is whatever they take it out of their tax return, what they've used.
Let me help you out on Obamacare. The vast majority of the people in this country aren't even involved in Obamacare. Most of the people in this country have insurance through their employer. The very small portion of this country that actually deals with Obamacare, yeah, it's broken. There are some things that need to be changed about it. But what is the plan on the other side? All we hear is repeal and replace. Replace with what? There has been a Republican Congress. They have not replaced it with anything. All they have done is tried repeal, 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 repeal. Let's see the plan for replace before we repeal it. This is like getting your horse in front of the cart.
Well, I will absolutely say that the Republicans in Congress could have done a better job indicating and educating the American people on what the Republican approach to health care would be. Your lack of communication in that respect does not mean that the plan is not there. We have sent countless bills to Obama's desk saying it's time for us to scrap this and start over, and he has vetoed every single one of those. The issue with that is you're not going to send here's what the new health care law should be when the old health care law that's not working is still in place. So we first have to repeal, then we can come back to the drawing board. But the other thing I want to say on that
we
is...
have 20 million people who now have health insurance that didn't have health insurance before. If you repeal that, 20 million people now don't have health insurance. How is that beneficial for the people that don't? And like I said, the majority of people in this country aren't even affected by Obamacare. It is people who do not have insurance through their employer.
Because
small, I will give you small companies that are feeling the brunt of it.
Because it's one thing to have health insurance. And so if we're just looking to check a box off the list that says you're now insured, that's one thing. But if we actually look and we see the skyrocketing premiums that you're having to pay, whether or not you have subsidies for that, many people on the exchanges don't. You see the incredibly high deductibles that you have to pay. Most of these plans are catastrophe policies at best. And so just by saying 20 million people have insurance right now that otherwise wouldn't, if you can't use that insurance until you pay that first $9,000 to $12,000 out of pocket, you think those people really feel like they have health insurance? I would say no.
You can choose plans, though. There's still monthly fees. You don't have to pay $9,000 each.
Okay, yeah, he is correct. You can have a $1,500 deductible if you want to pay about $1,200 a month in your premium. So either way, you're either insuring the people with a really low deductible, but you're making it impossible for them to pay for it, or sure, they can pay their $150 a month and we say, hey, look at how cheap insurance is. But again, until you meet the deductible in place, and most people don't know that's how insurance works, until you meet that deductible, a lot of that cost you pay for out of pocket. So if your first $10,000, if that's what your deductible is, then it's essentially like you don't even have insurance until you first pay $10,000 in your medical bills. That is what's bankrupting families.
Oh yes, and it's a huge issue. I just paid a $3,500 bill last night because I went to a ER and I have insurance because the insurance company wouldn't cover that. So the entire industry seems to be broken at the moment. So what I think needs to happen is stay where we are and then fix what we have. Fix what we have is much better than just throwing everybody into chaos, because what happens the minute you repeal it? Who has insurance now?
Well, you would
Who
have...
doesn't have insurance now?
Well, the first problem with what you just said was you were talking about how this is pretty much the insurance companies are already broken now, and then you say stay with the broken system, then fix it. So we're just going to continue with the broken system along. So with your horse and cart, we're going to continue trotting this cart down the road with a broken wheel, and we're not going to get very far. What's the difference between just taking the cart out of the equation and riding the horse for a while?
Well, if perhaps the Republicans, instead of getting together and deciding to deny Obama anything he wanted to do, whether it benefited them or not, had actually worked with President Obama, we would have a better system in place. Unfortunately, we have a Congress that has said no to just about everything Obama has wanted to do in almost every single one of his State of the Unions. So the system is broken, and I do agree with Trump on one thing, and that is that Washington does need a change, but what it needs a change is this do-nothing Congress. That's what needs to change.
So you more attacking the lines of how our congressional parties sit, which includes the Senate and the House of Representatives that are voted by the American people?
No, I'm saying that the Republicans in Congress and in the state legislatures have gerrymandered this country into controlling Congress.
See, this is what bothers me, though, with many arguments from the left. Notice it's never that, something's not working and we might need to say, hey, what we tried failed, let's listen to the other guy. Now it's an excuse of gerrymandering. Now it's that, well, we can't really listen to the American people who voted in the senators, which, by the way, aren't gerrymandered because it's the entire state that votes on those. So we actually have a majority of the senators voted on by the American people that are saying no, for example, the do-nothing Congress that's talked about often, in saying no to his Supreme Court nominee Merrick Garland. And it's a problem with those. It's not the fact that the American people might have said, hey, we know you have another 2 or 3 years. This was back a couple of years ago, obviously, but when he won his re-election, and then in 2014, when the Senate came in with stronger numbers to the Republican side, instead of looking at it saying, hey, this means that Obama, we want you to slow down and we want you to listen to what the Republicans have to say, instead we view it as, oh, well, look, we don't know how they got there, but man, all they're doing is putting up that roadblock. Maybe that roadblock was put there by the American people.
I don't think the American people sent Trey Gowdy to Congress to spend $7 million investigating Hillary Clinton. I don't think that that's why they sent him. I think they sent him to pass bills, and bills originate in the Congress.
The Congress has an oversight function of the government, and if somebody's doing something they're not supposed to be doing, then it's congressional leaders' responsibility to seek those problems out.
And what did she do to cause that to happen? Why were they even investigating Hillary to begin with?
Because we wanted to see why we had an ambassador of the United States die while overseas after repeated requests to get aid for his embassy that everybody knew was going to be attacked.
Okay. And we did that for George Bush and the 83.
Oh, here it is. It's George Bush's fault.
Or Ronald Reagan. No, see, you can't have it both ways. You can't come and investigate Clinton because of an ambassador who was told to leave and didn't, and then just turn a blind eye to all of the deaths in embassies around the world under Reagan and Bush, where nothing was ever done.
Okay, so are you more upset that nothing was ever done, or are you more upset that you think it's unfair that Clinton, even though she probably did something wrong, is being investigated? Because what it sounds like is you're saying, hey, we know all those guys did wrong as well, but just Hillary's under... So are we admitting that she did wrong here?
I'm trying to clarify the claim. What did she do to cause herself to get investigated? That's the question.
Well,
what was the original beginning of it?
The original, the very...
I submit to you the original beginning of it is because she's a strong woman and this is a misogynistic world, and they went after her.
Now it's sexism.
They've been going after
it's either racism, sexism, Islamophobia. Remember, there's an excuse for everything.
Well, tell me, what was the original cause in opening up the investigation into Benghazi?
Because there were some issues regarding how it was handled when we had an ambassador and 3 other Americans die after our military was saying things like, well, we were told to stand down, or we didn't get the request, or we were waiting to hear back from them, we didn't. So you have 4 dead Americans, one of them being an ambassador, and the American people are now going, wait a minute, what's going on here? We want to know. Should somebody have told Trey Gowdy, hey, don't look into that, even though the American people are concerned with what's going on, the rise of Islamic terror? We think this might have been a terrorist attack itself, but don't you dare focus any on that. You go ahead and pass another bill that Obama's going to veto.
No, what I do think he probably should have been investigating was when she asked for additional funding for security for our embassies and around the world, and they denied the request, which in the Benghazi report, they denied the request what was she supposed to do? And
Well-
yes, you can investigate how she spent the money she was given by Congress around the world, but at the same time, don't say, no, we're not gonna give you additional funding for security, and then get angry at her because she spent the money in other places.
And that would probably be what we would discuss right now, had 33,000 emails not gone up missing, and then that opened up another investigation.
And the 22 million emails from the Bush administration that went missing and were deleted about weapons of mass destruction, your answer to that is, she deleted 33,000 non-work emails, and it wasn't her who deleted them. It was her lawyers after looking at them, saying these are work-related, these are not work-related.
Right. So Clinton's
she
lawyers say,
she
we'll
sat-
decide what's appropriate for the State Department to see, or the FBI
She
to see.
sat
excuse
for
me, and not-
11 hours in front of the Benghazi committee and testified to this very thing about her emails. The emails went directly to the lawyers. The lawyers, who also had security clearance, looked at all of the emails. They went into a pile. Those got deleted. The rest of the work emails. And how, just to begin with, why was the email even a discussion to begin with? Do you even know the genesis of that?
Yeah, because the idea of having a private email server was against State Department rules.
No, it was a conservative watchdog group called Justice Watch that...
Oh, you're saying how it was originally found out, or what the
I
original
asked you a
problem
question.
was?
The FOIA request went for everything that Hillary Clinton did as Secretary of State. This has been a systematic attack on the woman for 30 plus years, and it's because she's a strong woman. And there are people in this country who believe that a woman is not equal to a man. One of them is running for president, and it's not Hillary.
Well, I would say, just lastly, and then I know moderator's probably ready to move on. The 33,000 emails, and yes, Bush, fine, every other person in the history, we're at a collected 1 billion emails now that have been deleted, however you want to say that. The issue is we just discovered a new laptop or set of laptops that have emails on them that were not turned over to the State
You don't know
Department.
that.
That were not.
You
That's
don't.
what the FBI has already been saying.
The only official statement that has come out of the FBI was when the FBI director put his hands on the scale and sent a letter to the Republican Congress saying that, oh, we found, while doing another investigation, we found something that might be pertinent to the Hillary Clinton investigation.
And
Just letting you know.
And in the
a week
media-
before the election.
And in the media, all branches of it, or all networks, all have their insiders that they work with. That's how the media operates. You go and you always remain anonymous. You never give up your source. We know that. This is what the media does. But then those sources will tell you different things so that you can get a news story. And a lot of these reports are coming out now saying, hey, these are top-level FBI investigators that are saying, you know what, we're actually seeing that some of these emails were part of those originals that she said she deleted that weren't pertinent to the case, but actually we find out they weren't about her daughter's wedding or about her yoga classes.
Yeah.
I can't imagine having 33 emails about your daughter's wedding and your yoga classes.
Facts, not innuendo. The only thing we know for sure at this moment is that there were some emails on a laptop.
All right, so I'd like to move on to our final topic for the day, since we are running out of time in this short period. I'd like to give the students another chance to talk for a moment. I'd like to ask them. Yeah. I would like to ask you guys, do you believe that despite some students maybe not keeping up with all the elections and not being quite as informed as these two gentlemen, do you believe that they should, if they are eligible to vote, should go out and vote on November 8th and select the next president of the United States? Do you believe that it is their duty as an American citizen, and do you believe that even if it is an uninformed vote, they should still go out and vote?
I definitely believe it is the duty of an American citizen to go out and vote, but as far as being uninformed, an uninformed vote is almost as bad as no vote at all. In that sense also, you have to remember that you use the two gentlemen sitting next to us, they are the older generations that have been used to this Democratic Republican Party, which is where I kind of come in and say our generation has a different duty to not fall into those party categories, but look for ourselves and where we will more align. times are changing and continuously things are continuously changing, and we have to keep up, which is relevant to us. We can't just fall into what the older generations want us to do. While they have set the precedent, it's also important to keep in mind what is best for us. And we have seen many times again that even though the older generations have one thing in mind, sometimes what we choose to do as the newer generations turns out to be more beneficial and productive for the American people. So while they may be uninformed, I would just say probably sit this one out, wait until the next one, and then make an informed vote for another party or even a Republican Democratic candidate who has better experience and you have more knowledge about.
I agree with my opponent saying that uninformed votes are just as bad as not voting at all, but you should still have the choice of not voting at all. But anybody has enough information to find out on which president or whatever the case is, who should be elected. It's just the choice of not going and not looking. So overall, though, it is our duty.
Can I add something to that?
Go ahead.
I just want to say that we've been arguing back and forth over here, but this is hardly the first time the two of us have had this discussion. We have sat in the hallway during second period many a days, just going back and forth and having a conversation about what we believe. And that's how you get informed, is talking to people, finding their opinion. And voting in this country isn't about a party. It really isn't. It is about what is best for you as an individual, you as a family, and figuring out where you think this country ought to go. Because there's definitely a right and a left in this country, but there's a whole bunch of people right smack in the middle, and their voices sometimes aren't heard, and that's where you can make a difference. You can make your voice heard if you're an independent or even not aligned with one of the two parties. The two of us know a lot, and I bet that if you went around the school, there's a lot of teachers who aren't informed either. And so don't feel bad about it.
And as
Well,
a
if I can say-
journalism teacher, I will tell you, you need to be your own researcher. You have to today, because you're right, there's so many right in the center, but they do not get the exact story from what's in the media. Media is entertainment today. I know that as a journalism teacher. I say very neutral on that, because it is our job as journalists to find the facts. And it's your job as a voter to find the facts for your right, for your family and your beliefs and your values and ethics. That's your right.
Okay, and thank you. I was just making sure I got my time too. I will say I absolutely agree. It might be the only thing that McCoy and I agree on in this debate so far. But there is absolutely a need for young people to start talking about these issues. I guarantee you, we could go to some other teachers on this campus and they would be uninformed. Not only that, but you could probably ask them, hey, what do you think about the election so far? And there's this sense of fear in even discussing it. Well, I'm not going to tell you who I'm voting for. I'm not telling you what party I'm part of. You know, that's private. And sure, it's private information if you don't want to share it. But let's be out and about with it so that we can really start to understand where each other is coming from. Because if we don't get that level of understanding between each other, then we're always going to hate each other if we found out, oh, you voted for that guy, you voted for that guy, or you voted for that girl, you know, that sort of thing. So talk about these issues, and when you can put a friend of yours on the opposite end of the political spectrum, you start to look at that mentality that they might have, not as terrible for America, not as corrupt, not as sinister, but you say, hey, he has some good points and he's a good friend of mine. I'd like to listen to some of those. So I think that the best thing we can do is actually talk about these issues in a calm and civilized manner. And my advice to everybody would be stay off of Facebook arguments. That's not going to do anything for you but make everybody's blood pressure go up. Talk about this face-to-face with the people that you care about.
All right, I'd like to thank everyone for coming out today. Like I said, this will be the first of many debates that I hope to host. Probably not with these two ever again because it gets a little bit steamy. But yeah, I'd like to thank you all for coming out and thank you for all your support.